Hello everybody and welcome back for another episode of Indie Impressions. My name is Nick and today we're going to be checking out something called Elysis by developer Fervor. And Elysis is a top-down action RPG which sort of functions a lot like a very combat-heavy Zelda Link's Awakening. And the graphical aesthetic seems to fall somewhere between maybe 8 and 16 bits, so it's got kind of like a retro style, but it's not entirely retro. It seems to be more of a common theme than anything. So I've got some mixed feelings about this one. I played it for about a half an hour to 45 minutes. A lot of that was actually setting up the controls, unfortunately, so there's some caveats. Like I said, it's a mixed bag, but I think it's pretty promising, and I do want to at least show you off a little bit of this. So let me show you the controls first of all, and then we'll just jump into the game. The tutorial was a little bit long, although there are some good things about it too. It sets up a theme that the game seems to be rather witty and kind of sarcastic and funny, but then in the actual game, I didn't really notice much of that sort of personality, which brings me to another point of I'm not exactly sure how much of this is finished and how much of this is just showing off features. And they don't really make that super obvious from the page that I downloaded this from on itch.io, which is kind of important to set up the context of what we're playing here. And although this is stated to be a preview/demo, I do want to know if this is actually like meant to sort of give you a feel for the general progression mechanic, or if they're just throwing items your way left and right for the sake of giving you items so you can try them and play with them and see if you like the feel of them. I think it's probably more towards the latter, but I don't really have any evidence for that other than just my own personal thoughts. So, customized controls. So this is where a lot of the contention started for me, is just that I had a lot of difficulty with the controls. I'm not sure exactly if it's because things are over-mappable or under-mappable. There seems to be not enough controls and also too many at the same time. And I think perhaps some of them need to be condensed so they can function as multiple context-sensitive buttons. Maybe other things need to be broken apart. But I ended up just taking all this stuff and kind of playing with it on Joy-to-Key and eventually found a combination that seemed right to me, where I could use A to both activate things and also to attack. So I actually had to double up functions on that. But now I'll attack every time I open a chest, which, you know, it's not a big deal or anything, but, you know, for streamline's sake, you might want to probably make those things not do that, if necessary. And there's also some unnecessary item management stuff, but I'll show you that in the actual game. Anyway, let's jump into it. Start game. And here we are. So we're brought to a very dark and desolate world, it seems. And there's just always this impending feeling of gloom and doom around us, partially because there's always this cone of light that seems to pervade everywhere we go. So we just picked up a sword, as you probably noticed, and we can take our sword and we can equip it. First thing is when you press activate, it says, do you want to equip or drop? I think that should probably be put to the second part of it after you move it around, or maybe put another button that could be, you know, specifically for inventory management that allows you to open up a submenu. It's our only main weapon for the moment, so I'm going to drop that in there, close it, and now we can swipe. And you probably get the idea. It looks very much like Link's Awakening, and I don't think I'm too far off in saying that, but it's also got maybe a little bit of like a Minish Cap or pseudo Link to the Past vibe to it, although, like I said, sort of down-resed from 16-bit. This is our shop. There's not really much to do here at the moment. Shopkeeper seems to be asleep. Hello, welcome to the ZZ shop. And something about, I think we can, like, buy stuff, but it doesn't always work. Just a heads up, buying arrows and bombs is weird right now. You can buy them, but they don't even need to be in your inventory for them to work. We cool? Okay. Yeah, there's kind of a frank nature about just, like, getting to the point with that sort of thing, which I think is kind of cool. So there's a dungeon. We can go in there if we want to do a bit of dungeoneering. I will do that, but first I want to actually head down to the south, because there's actually an item that I want to go ahead and claim since it's right here. So another thing that I found a little bit of a mixed bag with this is, well, first of all, the premise. Do I really want such a thing as a very combat-heavy Link's Awakening style game? I'm kind of not entirely sold on the premise. I think probably the thing that I liked more than anything about the Zelda games is the exploration, the progression mechanic, and if we kind of distill that down to just the combat, is what's left still something that's really all that fun? I kind of looked at the combat in Zelda as sort of like the means to an end. Like, it's the way that you break up the puzzles in exploration. You want there to be something standing in your way that's just sort of a minor distraction. And that happens in this to some degree, because we have a lot of the same other functions that happen in Zelda games as this. We've got the block pushing puzzles, we've got spikes and things that knock you into pits. We've got blocks that turn on and off and statues we need to push around onto buttons. So, you know, basically all of the Zelda premises that make it Zelda are there, but we've just got a very heavy focus on combat. And I know this isn't really showing you that as of this point, but we will get into that stuff when we get into the dungeon. There's like way more enemies than I really ever wanted to see in my life. But the thing is, the game does actually do some things to break up what would have been a bit monotonous in just having constant combat all the time, because what's actually going on is there's a ton of different weapons that we can get, and then also these augmentations that you can add that are called add-ons that will allow us to kind of change the functions of the way things work. And, you know, that's a really cool idea, and I think that actually does give this a lot more possibility for life, because what is Zelda beyond just a bunch of locks and key mechanisms, right? So I just picked up some item, didn't really tell me what it was. So we got a Belt of Stern Might, a Blessed Belt, Surging with Power, increases max HP and Strength. Oh, well, that seems pretty good. And we got a Boomerang, which I'm going to drop onto one of my sub-weapon area blocks on there. And I'll put that up. Actually, I'll put that on 3, because I'm going to get my quote-unquote Estus Flask later, which I'll put onto 4. But anyway, what I was saying is, in terms of progression, Zelda games are essentially a bunch of locks and keys. And what I mean by that is, you get the bow and arrow. The bow and arrow lets you shoot the statue's eye. That opens up doors. You get the hookshot. That allows you to cross gaps because there's pegs. You get a mallet. That allows you to pound down pegs, which then allow you to cross into new areas. You get bombs. That allows you to break into cracked walls. You get the idea. Everything in Zelda is just a progression mechanic disguised as a tool. And that's really not a new surprise or anything for anybody who's been around the game scene. Really, all progression mechanics in some ways are just ways of disguising keys as other things so you don't really notice. And that's fine, but in this case, we're actually opening it up to something a little bit different, where progression comes in the form of extraneous items that aren't necessarily always required for progression. Because in Zelda, you know, you could double up items as both tools and weapons a lot of the time, but there weren't a lot of items that were just kind of around for the sake of cosmetics or, you know, non-functional reasons. Pretty much everything had a direct purpose, and I'm not saying that in this game things aren't going to have a direct purpose, but there's a little bit more customizability or being able to tailor your experience more. And you'll also notice you can kind of combo swipes with this, and there's a few weapons that take advantage of that more than others. This is also a little bit of a different thing. Oh, you know what? I need a different weapon to be able to slide this. So this giant ball needs to go into this giant hole over here, and you actually can't fall in the hole, which is kind of funny considering in a lot of other places you'll fall into holes far more regularly than you would have actually wanted. So I could continue down, and I would, except for the sake of time, I think I'm actually going to go back and head over to the dungeon now that I've got my boomerang. Another thing is, you might notice there's some, like, Mega Man-style respawning of all enemies and resetting of all structures, which I don't necessarily have a problem with on its face value, but there are instances where you can accidentally go through doors much more readily than you want to, and reset a puzzle you were working on when you didn't mean to, or because you just got pushed into it by an enemy. I find that very frustrating, and I would hope that they could maybe reduce the hitboxes on the doors so you could maybe not go through them quite so easily, or even, dare I say, perhaps consider putting a confirmation. No, I don't really want that. There's got to be a better way, although I'm not necessarily sure I know what that way is. Also, all these little Whoozits that I keep picking up, I'm not entirely sure what all of them are. I'm going to guess probably most of them have to do with either, like, synthesis materials or magic refilling. Obviously, the hearts are health. I don't really need to say that. And then the gems are probably, like, actual currency. But the little kind of fossil-looking things, little bits of rock and stuff, I'm not entirely sure what those are or what they do. You'll probably also notice in the top right corner, and it's taken me far too long to actually express this, but there's actually a stamina bar, and if I roll around a lot, you'll notice that actually drains, as well as when I swipe my weapon. And the heavier the weapon, I believe, the more stamina you're going to drain by using it, which actually seems pretty intuitive and makes quite a bit of sense. I'm not sure if I like this idea or not, but I think it also does introduce a good bit of balance to things, which, in Zelda, let's face it, there's not a lot of balance other than, like, the enemy placement and the way the levels are designed. It's just kind of like you get the tools you get, and you choose to use them or not. I picked up a shield there. It seems very unceremonious picking up these big items, like, in quick succession and also without any kind of fanfare every time you find them. but that's just the nature of this being a preview version. Every time I go to move one of these items over to my hotbar, I accidentally toggle the equip or drop button when I don't actually mean to do that. So I've mapped my shield. It is now attributed to my Y button, and I'm going to try to remember that's where I put it, but I can, of course, readjust things later if need be. And we'll roll our way into some other rooms here. I didn't actually grab the shield last time for some reason. I guess I walked right by it. Okay, so we're going to look for some more weapons and power-ups, and perhaps even some secrets, and I don't know, maybe I'll find a boss. I wandered around in this dungeon for quite a while, and I actually was stuck on a bunch of things, and then I realized it was primarily to do with my controls were kind of not mapped well at first, and then also, I didn't have very good weapons suited to the situations that I need to overcome, and this is bad. Yep, so I've fallen in the pit, and then I'm going to take 10 damage when I fall back down. I'm probably going to die, but I do get to keep all the stuff that I've unlocked so far, which is fine for progression's sake. Allows us to continue on, and you don't have to feel too bad when you make big mistakes like that. I'm just going to kind of zoom by everybody if I can. There is a checkpoint somewhere in this dungeon as well. I don't know if I'll make it there, but I hope I will. Alright, so let's kill some of these guys. Maybe we'll get some heart drops and everything will be just fine. This is one of those frustrating moments that I had noticed where I was accidentally getting pushed through doors. Okay, be careful. Alright, cool. Got exactly one hit left, so any one of these bats that wants to get a little feisty on me is going to be my death. So you'll notice this little block area over here. This is very Zelda-like. By activating these rocks, I'm actually going to eventually be able to trigger a chest to spawn in here. But the thing is, there's bats on both sides and all along this path, and you can also be pushed around by these blocks. So if I happen to, have that happen, that happens, and then I die. Not a huge deal, because I can just walk right back to that in 5 seconds. Just restarts me in the shop with full health or close to full health, and all the stuff I had a second ago is still intact, like I said, so no biggie. But that's one of those cases where I think it's either you just have to figure out a way through this that's a little bit more useful, or you also just might need a better weapon or tool or item to deal with that scenario. And I was able to activate it and figure out how to do it, but when I got to the other side, there were some bats waiting for me, and one of them knocked into me. The bat knocking into me then pushed me into the doorway, which then reset all of the blocks, or the little gems that are stones that I had activated, which then became unactivated, and the bats respawned, and it was very frustrating. So yeah, that's one of those things. Maybe there could be like a timer. If you walk through a door and walk back in, the enemies don't respawn if you do it in under 30 seconds or something like that. And this is our flask. If I could pick it up, we're going to put that into our sub-slot 4. Very useful item, as you might imagine. This is our only health replenishment item that I'm aware of. And it does just seem to get charges sort of out of the blue. It might be because of the items that I pick up, or it might be because I kill red slimes and then harvest their essence. I'm not entirely sure. I'll try and pay more attention when I pick up these little rocks and stuff, if maybe one of those triggers it. But I'm not totally sure, like I said. I would also kind of like it if maybe there was a way we could get like a lantern or something eventually, so we don't have to see the constant dark all around us. It's not like the worst thing in the world, but it also just kind of wears you down. Like, not being able to see the full environment, it kind of feels a little bit like a crutch for the sake of atmosphere, maybe. And I'm not sure, like, how panned out or fleshed out this art style is still, so maybe there's a lot of this stuff that's still in the works. Because as I'm looking at it, and this is just sort of a general sentiment that I have about this type of top-down art style in general, well, there's some things that are sort of diagonally tilted down a little bit, so like the player, these little bits that I'm breaking up, the plants I mean, the enemies, but then you look at the rocks on the walls, and those are sort of more straight up and down, and these rocks in particular, not as much as some other ones I believe that I've noticed in the past. Still haven't gotten a charge on this. Maybe if I get over full, it acts like a reserve tank or something in Metroid. If I keep picking up hearts, maybe they'll go into my flask. I don't know. But yeah, the other thing is also the shading of items seems a little bit inconsistent. Like, our character, pretty much flat shaded, and that kind of works in a way because it does let the character stand out versus the background. But then you look at the enemies and, like, well, there's some that seem to be shaded more than others, and it's, again, not a big deal. It's not all that inconsistent. For the most part, things look fine. But I feel like there's a little bit of style that still could come a ways yet on this one. And I would like to see that, because I do feel like this art style in general could have some very pretty effects going on in it, but, you know, again, I don't know how far into the development this particular project is. You know, a lot of the little details that need to be there are there. You know, you've got a shadow under the player when you walk on ground, and then you've got a little ripple under you when you walk on the water. Even the enemies have a little ripple when they walk on the water, and, you know, things are pronounced as much as they need to be, but, you know, it's nitpicky stuff. So I think I just opened a chest here. What did I get? Oh, some kind of boots. What did I get? Boots of what? Boots of Dexaberol. That sounds like a medicine. Boots that make you feel energized, stamina recovery increases, stamina recovery increase and run on use. Okay. Good to know. So it's a sub-item that I could use, I guess, here. Well, I kind of want the extra max HP, though, so maybe I won't. And I wonder what's up with these, too, like, these extra boxes. Can I just... Oop, I just dropped my boomerang. Why would I ever want to drop my boomerang? Maybe there's just items that end up down there for other uses that I haven't actually run into yet. I'm not entirely sure. As far as stuff that you can find in this demo, though, it's pretty meaty. There's actually a lot to see and do here. The descriptors in the box, it states there's a couple of boss fights, like 2 3/4 dungeons that you can explore, and I've really only wandered around the overworld in this for a bit. And 20+ monsters, which is actually quite a bit implemented for what seems like a reasonably early along bit of gameplay. And again, I'm super not sure how far we are along, because there seems to be a lot of items and enemies and stuff implemented, but also there's some basic stuff that also seems like it might be missing so far too. So it's kind of up in the air for me. I'd be interested to talk to the developers actually and see where they're at with things. Too bad I didn't have them on for this. So we've got a new type of weapon here. This is more like a rapier sword. It's a light sword used for quick advancing strikes, and it's actually got a value also. I think all the swords and items do. So maybe there's a little bit of an economy thing going on, so we can kind of slap enemies around with this sucker. This is the weapon that I prefer to use for the most part. It feels the most nimble. And since we're dealing with a lot of enemies, and you haven't even seen the half of it yet, you do want good crowd control if possible. So you want a way to be able to just slice through stuff very quickly. You can also pick up and throw pots in case you weren't aware. I should really be using my roll a lot more frequently too, because, oh, you can actually roll through and over and under certain attacks entirely, where you can just completely avoid damage. I'm not very good at that, unfortunately, but I would definitely want to issue you guys the challenge of trying out this demo, see what you can find as well. This version that I'm playing right now is completely free, and you can go ahead and download it. There's a name your own price thing, and that's just general with each.io. It's a website that I've gone to for a little bit now, and I just randomly fell off that. There should be a little bit of a moment where you, like, struggle to regain balance before you fall off. It's a little too easy to fall, in my opinion. I believe even in Link to the Past, there was a little bit of a buffer time before you immediately fell in. With this, you just walk slightly close to them, and it almost just sucks you into the void, which, that's no fun. What's over here to the right? Also, there's no map. I just remembered, which is kind of an important factor. These maps are very sprawling. These dungeons that I've noticed so far, they have a lot to them, and it's really hard to remember where you've been and where you haven't been, so I hope that's a thing that'll get implemented, or maybe it's an item I have to find. I'm not entirely sure, but I am curious to see if that's going to be a feature in the final version or what. And this is, okay, so one reason why the darkness actually is not so bad is because these actually activate in a cool way. When I hit the buttons, it actually does bring up a little, like a lens, I almost said lens flare, that's not the right thing. Just a little bit of a saturated bit of light that shows up in the distance, which lets you know very quickly and easily that you've activated an item off in the distance, and you don't really have to think very hard about it. Because that is a very important bit of user feedback, knowing that you've activated something, and the ways that that's implemented could definitely have a big effect on people's opinion of, you know, the accessibility of the game. So we're activating these torches one by one. I like to get up here, but this freaking cloud won't go away. There we go. And we'll just kind of whip right through him. And again, if I were to have gone out of this room, all the enemies would respawn, but I believe the buttons would stay intact. Alright, so there we go. Slide that open. The dungeons in this have a very different feel to them than Zelda dungeons in general, which tend to be locked away. There's a lot of areas that are like kind of linear progression where you need to find the master key, you need to find various items that allow you entry to hit certain switches and all of that stuff. Like I said, this game seems to be a little bit more non-linearly focused, if that's even a word. You can do things generally at the speed you want, although there's things that seem to be locked away in ways that you might not even realize, and again, that harkens back to whether or not the progression mechanic is fleshed out here. Whether or not that's going to be the way things are in the final version, I'm not sure. See, this is a bit of a problem. I wanted to attack that guy, but the checkpoint teleporter is actually right there, so I actually end up just leaving the dungeon. And I was right on the verge of showing you a secret as well. You know what? I'll go back in. And all the enemies are back again. And let's go up here. So there's actually a chest with another item in it. What's this item? I forget. Oh, it's the hammer. Hammer is the thing that I needed to, I believe, kick that big ball item around. So actually, you know what? I'm going to go around and do a little bit of Metroidvania-style exploration, if you'll pardon the use of that term. And we're going to go down to the south and see if we can go find that big green ball and see if we can whack it around with this mallet and play a little bit of croquet, if we could. I don't really remember where it was, though. I think it was south, then left, then south again, maybe? Okay, I went left again. I hope it's over here. Ah, there it is. Okay, I got lucky. There might not be a lot of other ways to even go, so maybe I'm making this sound much more dramatic than it actually is. Also, I have more than enough stamina, apparently. I've noticed that there's experience that I get, but I don't think I've ever noticed that I've leveled, so I think there are still some, like, major gameplay systems that aren't really implemented at this point. Oh, I guess I can hit that. Alright, in the tutorial, I'm pretty sure I was able to use the mallet to hit this around, so maybe I've got it wrong, maybe something else, I don't know. I wanted to see what would happen if I knock it into that hole. Maybe we'll just go down a little more here since we're already this far down. And there's some more enemies, I think, that were a little bit more advanced. Some scary stuff. As much as I do enjoy rolling and dodging and all of that stuff, I feel like you don't necessarily have the tools necessary to be able to avoid a lot of the stuff that's coming at you very fast. In this case, sometimes you get... Oh, this must be another dungeon already, wow. And with a Dragon Warrior-style steps down, well, not that that's... like, they have the license to only use that. You know what? I'm not going to fight that thing. That thing's way too hard for me. And I guess we're in the ice dungeon now. I don't think I want to hang out here. This is way too hard for me, or will be way too hard for me, so I think I'll just kind of wander aimlessly as I... Oh, geez. Yep, this is crazy. Not a chance. I don't even know if I can expand my health bar other than those various items that I've picked up. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. And there's no way to save progress beyond quitting. So once you are done with your session, you're pretty much just done. So you got to get whatever you can out of this while you can still experience the demo. But, you know, it's got some positives, it's got some negatives. What game doesn't? I hope to see this continue in development, and I'd be very interested in revisiting this later. I had a bit of a different impression of this just from reading about it or seeing some previews. I was kind of thinking, like, what if this is some sort of, like, Link's Awakening procedurally generated game? Would that be fun? I'm like, well, Isaac's fun. Maybe this could work something out. And then I get in, it's like, actually, this is just kind of like a reimagined version of a Zelda game, which I could kind of see, like, sitting around with some friends and being like, hey, what do you think if we just, like, added all this stuff to Zelda, and then eventually it wouldn't be Zelda anymore? That would be kind of a cool premise, and I think that's kind of what we're going for here with this particular project. So I think that's about what I need to say for this one. Let me know what you think. I'm very curious to hear your opinions. I could see this being somewhat of a slightly controversial video, because it did seem like it was maybe a little bit more negative on the game than it probably deserved, especially since, you know, still preview version, still not done or anything like that. But, you know, it's an impressions video. I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff for the most part. I didn't script this or anything. I was just kind of wandering aimlessly, looking for stuff and talking about features as I go, and that's just my style. So let me know if you agree with any of the things I said. Definitely try and go and download this first, though. See if you can play this firsthand. So you can see if you do agree with things, or, you know, just going from the video kind of wouldn't give you the full picture, especially when it comes to the controls. I want to know if you guys agree whether the controls are kind of messed up. Take your time, make some Joy to Key stuff if you need to, find a way that works for you, but also just try it on the default keyboard controls, and just let me know if you feel like it's not very ergonomic or intuitive out of the gate. This is stuff, though, that could be very easily adjusted, so I feel like I'm not being too harsh in criticizing that, because you could probably fix the controls in one day without too much really in-depth stuff. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's episode. Let me know what you think in the comments, and make sure you leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. be sure to come back again tomorrow for new episodes of Indie Impressions. They're up every single day, and the link for the game is going to be right in the description. So do what you got to do. Let me know what you think, and I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. Talk to you all later.